after that tragedy, that horrible bridge collapse, that we've all seen the footage that looks like, it almost just gets poked and just collapses in a half a second. This entire landmark bridge comes down, collapses, obviously multiple casualties, horrible tragedy, but it does make you wonder what's going on in our Department of Transportation, what's going on with Pete Buttigieg, and what's going on with the Biden administration in terms of where they're spending your money, and if it's supposed to be on infrastructure, if we're supposed to have these big infrastructure bills that we know we're actually, they would say it's infrastructure bill, but really it's a environmental bill.
Right.
That this is the kind of thing that's happening. And it's not just this. We obviously have seen the problems in the airline industry. Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire, he posted train derailments, supply chain crisis, planes falling from the sky, ships crashing into bridges. I don't know what the cause of this latest catastrophe is, but the overall picture is quite bleak. And I think that's how we should all feel about this, which is not saying there's anything nefarious that happened in that tragedy, but that maybe that the cause and the root of that is that we are spending our money on the wrong places.
Well, and this is the reality of an election year. You start to analyze the decisions and the accomplishments or failures of an administration when they're on the ticket to run for re-election. And here's what we've got here. One of the marquee pieces of legislation that the Biden administration points to as one of their biggest victories in his tenure as president are the Build Back Better Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. So they were two pieces of legislation that went in tandem, but when you add the total of the spending from those two pieces of legislation, it's $2.2 trillion. $2.2 trillion that are supposed to be going to building back better the infrastructure of the United States, as well as the Infrastructure Investment Act.
Yeah.
And what have we seen out of this? We've seen the litany of disasters, whether it's East Palestine, Ohio,
I didn't mention
the train derailment.
And people aren't commenting that. A lot of comments right now on the YouTube channel going, don't forget about East Palestine. Of course, the East Palestine situation.
And now you see the bridges, the airlines. You can't forget when Southwest and one other airline had that massive outage and the FAA had to ground the entire fleet of aircraft from companies. We're not seeing a building back better. And it leads the question, what is Pete Buttigieg doing, and where is $2.2 trillion going except for Green New Deal light policies?
This is really one of the few places I believe all of us can get behind. Yeah, our bridges should be safe. Yeah, our trains should be safe. Our airplanes certainly should be safe. Good Lord, I'm not a great flyer to begin with. Okay, so when you have this news happening, not the most fun for those of us that are nervous flyers.
We should play this bite because this...
Be fair.
This is from Mayor Pete, as he was lovingly called when he was running for president, but now Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. This is when he was addressing the disaster that happened with this bridge in Maryland. Let's play bite 24.
How concerned should Americans be about the bridges that they're traversing every single day in this country?
Well, this is a unique circumstance. I do not know of a bridge that has been constructed to withstand a direct impact from a vessel of this size. What I will say is anytime anything happens to any bridge, we as a country take that and learn from that. This is no ordinary bridge. This is one of the cathedrals of American infrastructure. It has been part of the skyline of this region for longer than many of us have been alive. So the path to normalcy will not be easy, it will not be quick, it will not be inexpensive, but we will rebuild together.
He says, you know what, this has been part of the skyline for longer than most of us have been alive. Maybe that's a problem.
Right.
Maybe that's something we need to be addressing here as you go across, I don't know, the Golden Gate Bridge thousands of times a day. You go to the Brooklyn Bridge. These have all been there for a very long time.
Right.
Not just before we were born, before our parents were born, most likely. Those bridges and those things were there. You don't see that happening. Look, tragedies happen. I don't want to say that this is an intentional thing or that they knew somehow that if a tanker tapped this bridge, it would fall down. But it should be a wake-up call.
We have seen bridges collapse. There was one out of Philadelphia where a part of the interstate system, much newer than many of these bridges, collapsed just due to a fire. And then we saw, obviously, it's been more than 15 years now, Minnesota, we saw a bridge collapse there. Why weren't there wake-up calls? That was under the Obama administration. Why weren't there wake-up calls then to say we need to be analyzing every bridge in this country and see if, maybe these things aren't withstanding that. Also, to his statement that he doesn't know of a bridge that could withstand an impact like this of a tanker of this size. Well, we have tankers of this size. They pass through these bridges every single day. If you passed a $2 trillion infrastructure bill, maybe start there. Maybe start there and think, if we've got ships this big that go under every day, if something happens, can we minimize the damage instead of not just a section of the bridge falling down? It looked like dominoes collapsing.
In a half a second, it comes down. I mean, it's unbelievable. The deal we have sort of with the federal government here should be, we pay you X amount of dollars. Those dollars feel ridiculous, but they mainly feel ridiculous when things like this happen. When you go, this is the basic need. The stuff that isn't the basic need, if you're building, termite training facilities in lower Alabama, that's maybe the stuff where we go, okay, that's a problem. That's not really where you should be focused on. Maybe, I don't know, your cathedral to the Midwest or whatever he called it.
Cathedral of American infrastructure.
No one's checking that cathedral, okay? Like this is like, it's fine. It's a cathedral. It's been there forever. We talk about
like Notre Dame. Nothing happened back there. Right? Yeah, the cathedrals, they're generally okay.
Yeah. We think about, Will and I were just talking about like even things like the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. You're talking about modern marvels that are now at this point very old.
Yeah.
And by the way, a disaster happens on that. I can't even imagine. You're under the ocean.
Thousands of casualties.
Yes, and you shouldn't have to think about that.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of times when you are doing that, you are thinking about it. Like, wow, that's
the only thing you're thinking of.
This is wild.
If
I'm
you know
under the water.
Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, it goes across the bay.
Miles of underwater.
From Virginia Beach area to the eastern shore of Virginia.
Headed towards
and it
DC,
cuts across the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. And it is part bridge, part tunnel, off and on for, I think, 25, 30 miles.
A long time.
And you are sometimes on a bridge, then you go under the water, and that's how ships can pass over the sections that are tunnel sections to go through, so they didn't have to build too tall of a bridge. The thing moves with the wind because of how it's engineered. It's one of the more terrifying things you can go on. But I hope that our $2.2 trillion are looking at the structural integrity of that bridge today.
It's wild to go on it, but you've also never really questioned it.
Right.
I've never been like, before I do this, is there any other way around? No, because you actually have some trust in your transportation department that you're going to be safe, even if it feels kind of ridiculous. I feel horrible for the victims of this. I don't want to take anything away from this. Multiple people, there are multiple casualties. It could have been a lot worse, if we're being honest. You don't want to take anything away from the people that were lost and their families. But also, if it had happened just a handful of hours later and not in the middle of the night, essentially, you could have had an extreme mass casualty event. And I'm very thankful that did not happen.